It's okay.
Say that.
I said blast off. I don't know if you saw. It was a countdown.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, I was wondering what the hell was that. Now it's going to kick me out again or something.
Right.
But it was taking me to all of these sign-ins and stuff like that, and then I had to change YouTube.
Man, sorry.
You still in Portugal?
Permissions and all sorts of things.
Okay,
anyway,
but
here now.
The second one was good then. The Zazam something. Broadcast as a guest. Yeah, okay, it's good. It's good.
Zazam, yeah. You were just telling about a dream, was it? About golf balls?
Yeah, it was. We were talking a bit about golf, and I just remembered that I had this really quite long dream, where there was maybe 4 or 5 different parts that were very lucid, and the first part was about this golfing dream, and Rob was in it. So
interesting.
That's all. Nothing too important.
Dreams have been really.
We were just filling the gaps. Yeah, after you.
Right. It has been really rich for me. Yeah, lots going on there. Seems kind of freezing on my end. I don't know if it's the same for you guys.
Yeah. I don't know what Rob's doing. No, you've dropped out there, Phil. Rob's gone for a walk.
Had to get some batteries. My mouse died on me.
Okay. I don't know what's happened to Phil. He's just dropped out.
Yeah, if he's in Portugal, it might still be internet connection, right? Because
Yeah.
he said originally that he had problems with internet connection there.
Do you think it would happen if I switched over to Zoom? Do you think it would help? I don't think it would.
I don't think it would either.
Right.
Is he back? Is he back on the farm? Is that where he's staying?
I don't know. It didn't look like the farm, that picture. Let's see if he comes back in. How you feeling, mate?
How am I feeling?
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good.
I'm sensing a bit of tension.
For me?
Yeah.
I'm working on something.
All right.
I'm trying to get a battery out of this mouse so I could replace it.
Okay.
The batteries were dead, so it was in there tight, and I was digging at it. That's probably what you were seeing. I was trying to dig that battery out of there.
Okay. Well, how are you feeling in general? Because that's the question. Maybe.
Overall, pretty good. I'm kind of in a place of neutrality. I think it's mixed. There's a lot of curiosity about how things are going to unfold here in the States, and at the same time, um, a little bit of being on guard to what could happen. So, I guess, the first day after the election, first day or two after the election, I really needed to do some processing, and I did. I really spent some time with myself and what was coming up, and looking at it, and just feeling everything that was going on, based on the results that took place. Um, and it was about a good 2 day venture before the system started to um, become more neutral. Um, just more open to wondering how things were going to unfold here. I mean, it doesn't do me any good to get into a projection about what could happen in the future, because I don't know, and I don't think anybody else does either. And I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of stuff being posted around all this. My wife's been a little bit edgy when it comes to um, what could happen. But there's certain parts of what's being said that I just absolutely agree with, and that is we do need a change. We do need to take a serious look at some of the things that are going on in the country. Um, Now, is that what's going to happen? I just don't know. So I'm kind of in a place where I'm not trying to draw a lot of conclusions. I'm not trying to get into. Um, Matter of fact, I've gotten into no discussions, pushbacks at all since the election. I hear what people have,
How does
and
that
just kind of.
feel?
Well, that's the big part of it is being, like, for me, intelligent enough to realize that none of these things go anywhere. Because if you have somebody's conditioning pushing up against your own conditioning, and you're not able to look at your own conditioning, then it's just a loop that you stay stuck in. I am able to look at my conditioning. So I've spent, like I said, the first 2 days after the election, I spent a good amount of time. And that next morning, I woke up and saw the results. My nervous system was on edge for sure. And I was met with a number of people. One guy sent me a thing on Messenger gloating about the results. Just really, and I can see that for what it is. I think they really felt suppressed. That their guy wasn't in there. They had to choke it down for 4 years. They hated the fact it was going on, and then all of that emotion and stuff that they had been pushing down, their beliefs about what was going on, just came to the surface when they won. And it was like, hallelujah, I've got my way, and da 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 da. And so I understand that. It's I don't. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, is being able to understand where it is people are coming from and what's going on with them, so that I don't get caught up in a push pull or downward spiral situation, and go into an unconscious rant or raving or mindset on one, things that I don't know about, like where this is actually going to take us, and two, a push pull where my system gets jacked, and and then I've got 2 or 3 days in my system that takes it to come back down. Meanwhile, the mind races. My sleep's not as good as it is. My dreams are completely different. Um, so having that type of awareness of the way it works for me, I'm really kind of curious as to where this is going to go. Um, you know, I think for me, when it comes to character, this president is lacking. But when it comes to some other areas, he may be beneficial to the U.S. I just don't know. I just don't know. So, um,
Quite
you know,
often,
mostly I'm doing okay around the whole thing because I've really been keeping some attention in the body and feeling this whole thing and being with it, not trying to get caught up with what it is that everybody has said about it one way or another, but like how is it affecting me in the moment now? What's really going on in this moment?
yeah.
I'm wondering if you have a kind of an AK-47 or something stashed away at your side, Rob, because you've got the camouflage shirt on and you're kind of ready for anything.
Yeah, these are nice to play golf in. That's a reason I bought these was for golf, but I've got all the hardware. You don't want to come in my house uninvited. As a
I'll
lot of
remember
Americans, there's a ton of Americans here that I don't have any AK-47s, but I've got 12 gauge and 3 or 4 pistols and those types of things. If the country breaks out into civil war, we go anywhere close to that direction, everybody loses. There's just a no win to get into ideology over certain things and start killing people. And if we're still that barbaric in nature, which I suspect we are at some stages, then it's just a no-win situation. And I've got to, I'll move. I'll go to Canada or someplace. I'm not going to participate in it. I'm not fighting for it one way or another. I think it's ridiculous. And it's the whole thing for me is, I've read enough and listened to enough, and I love the American Indian way of approaching when they make decisions. And that is like, how does it affect the generations after us? And that's what I'm really kind of keep, how does it affect my granddaughter, my grandsons? What's life going to look like for them? What's going to be available for them when they come along? Of course, you don't really know, especially with AI, because there's a huge, big unknown right now that's coming on board. I heard one podcast I listened to last week said it would create over 97 million new jobs. So if that's the case, that could be huge.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that? Are you saying that if because of Trump getting in, that there's 97 million new jobs, or because of AI?
No, I said AI. I didn't say Trump. I said AI. So there's things about Trump that he's done, like nobody called out tariffs, like Trump did, where other countries, I mean, there's a lot of examples. France puts tariffs on Boeing planes that go into France, but we don't put tariffs on the Airbuses they make coming in here. So we can't be as competitive. We lose more money. There's a lot of things that he has pointed out from a business standpoint that the United States just isn't doing real well. But there are other things, like last time he was president, he pulled us out of the Paris Accord. He basically didn't want to have a whole lot to do with NATO. So there's, I just don't know. I mean, at this stage of the game, I'm just kind of in a flux as to see where we go and who he surrounds himself with, which he learned a lot. I mean, this guy's not stupid. He learned a lot in his 4 years that he wasn't president, so that he didn't bring anybody on board that's not a Trump's, that's not in 100% in his corner, that sees things the way he does. And they got Congress and they got the Senate. So they're going to be able to push some agendas through that, that are going to be pretty interesting. And I think, women, I've already heard a handful of women are leaving the country. That this whole thing, but he got 52% of that vote too. So, apparently more women. And I think it's, the other thing is we have to point out is that I think that this was set up perfectly for him to come in and win, because Joe Biden was old. Was no longer cognitively available for a lot of stuff. He's not able to bring on any new ideas. He's stuck in an old system that he's been in for 40 some years. And I think people were pushing up against that and wanting to get out of it. It's not that we're in, as far as the inflation go, the United States did better than any other country out there. And there's still plenty of work, low unemployment, high Wall Street, So, well, I'm in this place where I just don't see it's going to be terrible completely or good completely. I just want to. I'm more interested in watching it kind of unfold. But what I don't want to do is get stuck on a certain narrative of I don't like Trump or I'm for Biden or Harris or whatever it may be. And then everything drop of information that comes in bumps up against that. And all of it keeps tweaking me, right? I'll just keep getting tweaked because I got the underlying narrative that's already put in place. So that's what I was working on for the last for 2 or 3 days right after the election to really look what was going on in my system, what was it that was interfacing with the information that was coming in, and there's certain things that I saw that I was able to work through and kind of open the system up to be more open, curious, available to listen and hear what other people are saying. So.
What about you, Phil? How's it going? How's your feeling? What's happening to you?
Well, it's funny how, Rob, you first described all of this, because I feel a little bit stuck in that loop of two conditioned minds battering up against each other, but my world is suddenly kind of contracted into a very small space. I'm here. I got to England last Wednesday, I think. Yeah. So I've only been here a few days, and I'm staying in my mum's house, and it's challenging. Like, it's that old adage of, like, you think you're spiritual or enlightened, go stay with your family, and I've just had this real difficulty with my mum. Like, she's 5 foot tall, very kind of sweet looking and gentle on the surface, been an amazing mum in so many different ways. But I'm also seeing there are things that just frustrate me, and there are things like constant. I just had a kind of talk with her this morning about it, and I actually asked for what I wanted, which was basically to not ask me what I want all the time. It's this kind of constant sort of asking, like, do you want this? Can I get you this? Would you like this? And it's like a lot of noise for me. It's kind of, so she says she wants sort of peace and quiet, but actually she likes to have noise around her all the time in a way. And there's something about this relationship that I just haven't got. I lived with my mum for a little while after I got back from Thailand a long time ago, and it was the same thing. And so I feel like it's almost like I've sort of felt like I've gone backwards, and yet at the same time I'm also doing that thing. So I'm not feeling very mature in this, not as mature as you've been describing how you've been facing this situation, Rob, but I am being able to come into my body a lot more, and just noticing. I say this prayer every morning that's about kind of having a clear and open and spacious mind. And so every time I've got the frustration is with me, I'm looking at it and suddenly noticing, wait, my mind is just here. It's like in this tiny sort of contracted ball, and all it's focused on is the frustration and the irritation. And I don't like myself in it. There's a self-hatred in this. Like, I'm not supposed to. Something in another voice in my head is sort of going like, I'm not supposed to behave like this. I'm not supposed to express my irritation. I'm supposed to be a different way. And so when I've been noticing it, I kind of remember that prayer of clear, open, spacious mind. And it's like, oh, wait, there's a ton of other stuff here as well. Whether that be like the beauty of a crow flying over, or the clouds above, or just the boundlessness of the sky, or the love in me, like the sort of the heart of me that can also contain my irritation and sort of have love for myself and have love for my mum, even if I'm irritated at something that, even if I'm blaming her for my irritation. And so it's been really challenging, but I feel like there's something in this that is like that it may seem really far-fetched, but I feel like it's a bit related to the more macro scale of what you described, Rob. There is something like people are facing a past that and really having to look at certain things and sort of see, like, does this actually fit with the way we would like human beings to go? So on my micro scale, it's like, does this actually fit with how I would like to be in the world, or how I would like to feel in my life? Or and I don't think there's anything I need to do or I want more understanding of it, but I think I just need to really be present as much as I possibly can, and do that thing of what you described, Rob, of just being in the body with all of this, rather than in all of the words that are the stories of my mind, and just to feel it, just to bring consciousness to it, and let that do the work. Because I also feel like I'm in a place of unknown. Like I don't know the way through all of this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move forward. Don't know what the solutions are to my problems. And I think that's a big thing also for humanity. Like we just don't know. We don't know what the next best step is. So how about we kind of learn to listen a bit more and watch that unfolding happen? And the last thing I wanted to mention was I came across a definition of therapy, like the root meaning of therapy, and it was tending to the divine, or caring for the gods. Like that was the original definition of therapy. And then it became, because we became so individualized, which I think is a big part of what, I don't want to call it the problem of human beings, because maybe it was a really necessary movement, but therapy suddenly became very individualistic. Like, oh, I'm going to fix myself through therapy, rather than tend to the gods. And when this was first noticed, people started to, this was back in ancient Greece, people started to notice that the oracles, like the Oracle of Delphi, which was like people would flock to every single day for guidance in their lives, and it would have like a multitude of diverse voices to be heard. They went quiet. And then this was noticed by post-Plato philosophers, kind of after Plato and Socrates and so on. And I just found that interesting. Like, we stopped tending to the gods, we stopped doing actual proper therapy, or the original meaning of therapy. We started to tend more to ourselves, and then the gods became really quiet, or spirit became really quiet. And I found that quite a fascinating kind of turn in human events, human history. So I'm going to ask the Quack, like, how are you feeling? I don't know why your name is the Quack, but
Let's go with it. Just go with it.
I will.
No, that was really nice. I really appreciated the end of that too. Tending to the divine, that has a lot different feeling to it than the idea of therapy. And
Yeah.
it's like it's a bit coincidental too, because I'm looking for these words that describe what it is that we're doing here when I'm making the stuff for the business. And it's challenging because I don't want to, I don't want to call it therapy to start with at all, or at least I didn't think that, until I
Mm.
understood your definition that you just gave. And um, there's a practical element to that for me, in that, um, I don't have any papers or anything. We've got some certificates from the work that we've all done, but it's not really worth much, is it? You can't go and I can't go and get a job with it. I can't go to
Mm.
the local health place, and maybe I could, but anyway, I thought that was really, really interesting. Um, and Yeah, just the different feel that has from the idea of like normal sort of therapy, and there's like levels to that too for me, because I think that sort of fixing the self, fixing the ego it's helpful, but it's not the truth. It's helpful
Mm.
in the life, because what glasses you have on is how you see, what you experience, but then the the divine is what's looking through the glasses, and both elements to me are really important with this self inquiry, because both elements, like, you know to me, it's they're the answer. It is you can go through the ego, but all sides of the story have to be told. And whatever is coming, what you were saying, Rob, whatever's coming in the moment has to be, you have to have awareness of in the moment. And to me, that's the my wife calls it, that's the level of two. The level of two, it's kind of the ego realm, not badly, but just, that there's separation, there's me, there's you, and then the suffering that happens, there's a separation there. There's the different parts of ourselves that come through, and conflicting, and different parts with each other, that we're conflicting with other people.
Mm.
But then what looks through the eyes is always the same. And to me, that is the divine. And it's not always the answer, but it kind of always is. You can't always, like, I love self-inquiry because you can smack it real quick, but it's not always available. It doesn't always come like that. You've got to go through the ego sometimes.
Mm.
Um, but like personally, I resonate with both of you. Like, I recognize, Rob, that you were talking, like, saying a lot this I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And I often find myself in that state. Um, and so my feeling as you were saying that was that, oh, that's a great place to start an inquiry of just this, okay, what's the experience of I don't know? And is it okay for me to be here in that? And if I turn to that immediately, I just find this nice joy, which is here. Um, it comes in from the, like, solar plexus, actually, but it's not always like that. Um,
Mm.
so my question was like, what's your experience of that? And then when I listened to you, Phil, it came in a little bit with my wife, a bit the similar sort of annoyance. As we were on holidays, there were these moments where she's really, like, determined and directed, and she knows what she wants, and she's on it all the time, and I'm just a bit more floating. I don't mind so much what's happening, and I can live wherever, and a lot of that is because it's because I don't mind. I want to say a lot of that is because there's beauty everywhere as well. If you really stop, there's beauty everywhere. But my wife's very much, she knows what she likes and what she wants, and it's a bit frustrating sometimes when I'm with her, and I might say, hey, let's go this way. We'll be in a street looking for some restaurant, and she wants to go in the beautiful way always. The feng shui way. Let's go this way because it's beautiful. Sometimes I'll turn to the, like, not beautiful way, and I'll say, let's go that way. And I don't have much energy behind it because I don't really care, But I want to like shake her a bit sometimes and say, hey, there's, I just want to remind her that there's beauty where she's not looking as well. And she doesn't need reminding. Really, this is like maybe it's more about me, but I felt this frustration and similar to what you're saying with your mum and and then the two actually came together in this. Could I be like what's my experience of not knowing in relation to how to be with my wife in those moments, how to not be frustrated. And I get a bit I don't know, I get like a bit hurt when she sort of forces or takes the choice away from me and seem to force something upon me and and then quite often too, because the drive's not there for me. I don't go through with my, yes, let's go this way. Sometimes I do. I just put my foot down and say, no, I'm going this way, and that's it. And then we'll go that way, or I'll go that way. But a lot of the time, there's no passion in it, so it's a bit empty. And I feel that, and there's a certain sense of blame for her, but I know that it's a feeling of emptiness within me sometimes. So, so all of this bringing together is this. I don't know how to deal with that sense of emptiness and not having the drive, and then blaming it on my wife. It's like comparative. Even just like even that just come as a little insight that there's a comparison that's happening here, because I look at my wife and I see that she knows what she wants and how she wants it. I'm just going to turn my. So I don't know where that leaves any of you guys, but I'm happy to just sit and listen to maybe come back to that feeling a little bit as well, of just not knowing.
Yeah, there was a couple things there. One thing that it reminded me of, I went to uh, an AA meeting Thursday last week. I think it was Thursday or Friday, and there was a couple friends of mine. We met, had lunch or breakfast together. The one guy's been struggling a little bit. He has had an introduction to inquiry, and it's pretty interesting because when he uses it, he's really finds peace fairly quick when we talk. But it's like we all know, it can be hard to let go of certain narratives that we hold. Um, but what I noticed in the meeting was I'd be sitting there and that there would just be quiet listening going on, and then the inner voice would start to formulate what it wanted to say. And then a different thought would come in and it would go, oh yeah, that'll sound good. And then, oh yeah, that'll sound good. So then it was formulating all of the self was being activated to step up on the stage of the AA meeting and um, speak from the place that it was. And it was really interesting to watch that as it would come up inside of me. And yeah, I can't help but just smile a little bit because the conditioning to have approval and to meet, sound certain times, maybe even reference all the years sober that I have, as if that would to give me a little bit more power in the words that I'd be saying. All of that was interesting to just watch. I never spoke. It was I really didn't feel inclined to speak. Um, I said you said something, about starting the inquiry like within the unknown, and experientially for me, that's not where I start. Now that may be where it works for you, but what I'd noticed that, like for me, when I was doing 2 days of introspection, 3 days, really, not so much the third day, but still some of the stuff was coming up. It was because I noticed the unsettling. So that's where I started. I started with like what was coming up for me. I noticed disassociation. I noticed that I felt like I was kind of all over the place. I could feel shakiness in the body. There were certain areas of the body that felt tight, back of my neck and the top of my shoulders. Um, from that, there was um, strength in words, beliefs that I wanted to expound on. We had one guy come in to the golf that morning. The first thing that he said was, he was kind of boasting about Trump winning and stuff, and I was already in that kind of triggered state, so I just was silently watching um, everything that was coming up, everything that I could be aware of that was coming up in me, more tightness, more wanting to engage and get this point across or get that point across. I actually said nothing to him at all. Because that's what I did not want to go into this unconscious. I've done that so many times that I just don't see any fruitfulness in it at all. There's times to speak and times where I just don't think it goes anywhere whatsoever, but it does pull me in, and that getting pulled into it definitely seems to rev my system up even more.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mind will start to race for me. So that happened off and on. And then there was some other people that felt um, different ways. And so I could notice how I felt validated in what I was able to think at the time by listening to what it was they had to say. And I didn't say anything with them either. But there was just a really interesting watching of all of this go on. And the question that was coming up for me is, um, where is it? What's really going? Where's this going to take us? What is this going to open to? What is it that I can see and that I can't see, or where I think I can see? And and so that was part of the process. And then it would be come back to that place in my shoulder, the tightness, and I would see. A belief of, say, transgenders being harmed, or gay people being harmed, having their rights taken away, or abortion or something like that. Um, and I would let that come up, but then I would look at it and just kind of be with it and see it. Like, is that what's happening right now, or is this a belief? And it was, it's just all beliefs. It's not what's happening right now. Now I don't know what'll happen, but it wasn't happening right now. And so I could see how my system was projecting into um, a dread. We had talked about that when you and I had talked before. Like, there was this dread of like a horrible outcome, and I noticed how dark that feels in my system, and how that just starts to color everything in the future with darkness and terribleness and a bad place to be. Um, So, in that process, um, took a good 2 full days of visiting and letting go, because I'm working, I'm engaging with people. I can't just sit there and inquire and just be in the body with attention. At least I don't. Maybe somebody else does, but I don't. And then I would come back to when I had alone time. I would sit and start to feel, and so it was. And plus, it was beautiful outside. The birds were singing. It was, it was great to be outdoors and be able to do all of that. And there's a real beauty in seeing the sunshine and glisten off the grass. And Phil was talking about that before. It's like, or you were, somebody was saying, and so just noticing all that openness that's right there, all the serenity that's sitting right there, completely at peace in front of me. That's not at any type of conflict at all. Really there to be noticed. All I had to do was see it. I think there was a passage in the Bible that I took to heart some years ago, which is, "Heaven is laid upon the earth, but man can't see it." And I think I can't see it when I'm in my head. It's when I'm in my conditioning. It's when I'm acting out. But if I stop and I'm aware and I just open and I take it all in, it really feels like I can be with the heaven on earth. Feels like it speaks to me. That the divinity of that, if you want to call it that. There and my system seems to be invigorated more, feels more alive in that. There's so if that makes sense. But that was kind of the way. There's also um, Phil mentioned one of my big catchwords. That's always been really, really powerful in my system, and that you're supposed to or you need to. And y'all were talking about your wives and stuff like that. And I've been married 25 years coming up, and I can't tell you how many times I threatened divorce in the first 5 or 6 years, and then it was, I really saw it as, the relationship was the um, one of the things that touches on certain things in me. So if I use it as that avenue to go in and see what they're touching in me, then it actually helps open it up, right? It's actually prodding it. And it's closed, and it's a narrative that's closed, and there's resistance there, and that's why I defend it. I have my opinion, and this is the way, whatever it is. Um, Sometimes I'm able to get to that, and over the last 24 and a half years, I've had a lot of practice at doing that so that we get along much better now. I think you said it, Luke. It's like you could see a lot of good things. I just see so many powerfully good things about my wife and the way she treats everybody around her, how available she is to her children and grandchildren and mom and dad and myself and all of that type of stuff that I really kind of take it to heart about what Michael Brown was saying, and that is every time I'm triggered, it's me. It's something that's going on in my system. And that is just not, I still have this something in there that's like when I say it's me that's getting triggered, it almost feels like I got you again. It's almost like that means there's something the matter with me, or I just don't want to deal with that shit. So I want to change everybody else around me so that I don't have to deal with my own frustrations and irritations. And I've never found that to work at all. But what I have found it work is what I was laying out with this inquiry and talking to you guys, which has helped me quite a bit to reframe some of the stuff that I may be, because I know, look, you and I've been on calls before, and you go, this is kind of what I'm hearing, and boom, it just clicks right there in that moment what was going on with me. I needed to hear that. It completely reframed my view of it and opened something up. I really do want to. Maybe it's because how old I am. I don't know, but I want to find peace, a real peace, not fabricated peace, not ego saying peace. Anybody wants to have ego battles on the stage, I'll throw mine out there anytime. It can battle with the best of them. but I used to call it Rob. Y'all remember that? But that's I just don't. I don't think I'm ever not. It's like I've talked to Matt a number of times. I'm never going to be without ego and conditioning. Never in this lifetime does it look like that's going to be the case. If something happens miraculously, I'll let you guys know. And I'm never going to be without traumas that I've experienced when I was young. So for me, it's how can I live with those things without letting them pushing certain outcomes in my life that may not be beneficial to me or those that I love around me. And I want to be aware and available to that.
So you brought something up really that I feel is really important, and it's that piece about the reframing. And it's so related to what I was talking about, that changed meaning of therapy. We turned everything around kind of on its head by by kind of addressing everything towards the ego. Like it's the ego or the self, the individual that we're trying to fix. And that's just a kind of construct. We don't, in a way, we don't really choose the ego that we kind of take through our lives. Like we might mold it a little bit, we shape it in certain ways and so on. But maybe the reframe is like, if we were looking through that lens of tending to the gods or attending the caring for the gods or attending the divine, then, and the thing you mentioned about the Native Americans kind of looking at 7 generations ahead, what are we actually doing with everything we do in our lives? Like we've been kind of given a rucksack of baggage, basically, which might be called the ego, and we didn't sort of consciously say like, oh, that like when we were first conscious as, I don't know, little kids, but we didn't consciously say like, oh, I want that bag, I want that baggage or whatever to carry around with me. It was kind of maybe gifted to us through whatever created us as individuals. And looking at in the lens of that sort of 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind, it's reminding me essentially of something my partner sent to me recently, which was something like, your family will continue to feel their pain until one of that family decides, no, your family will continue to be in pain until one member of that family decides that they will actually feel it, that they will feel the pain. And so I'm thinking like the ego is just full of pain, and hence, I mean, there are other aspects to it as well, but there's a lot of suffering there. There are a lot of wounds that it carries. Mm-hmm. And hence when I get tweaked, like I'm using your word, Rob, tweaked, then I'm sort of straight in it myself. Like I start battling the ego, and it's interesting. Like, why do I feel that self-hatred? Like I didn't choose to be this way. I didn't choose any of my personalities or characteristics or whatever. They just kind of gradually formed, or they were there from the very beginning of my lifetime. So maybe there's a reason that I'm just not seeing that they're there. And perhaps that reason is to alleviate the pain of the past, of our ancestors, essentially, and to alleviate the pain of future generations. So looking kind of ahead and behind, like everything, every single little piece of pain and every single little piece of joy that I feel, kind of maybe it lifts some of the weight that my family line has carried for generations, for so many, maybe, yeah, so many thousands of generations even. And then that alleviates some of the pain of the collective as a whole. And in that way, then I'm not actually looking at my ego with self-hatred anymore. I'm sort of looking at it more in terms of, wow, that's a really loving, kind thing. There's a lot of generosity in being that individual. Sorry, Luke, what did you say?
No. I just was saying, like, I was just giving my own word to what you were saying. It's nice. It's nice. Again, it's interesting. Keep going.
Well, one other thing that sprung to mind was you talked about your dream, and I had a dream second night I was here, and it was of a werewolf. And when I looked up the symbolism of werewolves, it was a lot about transformation and also a lot about the duality of being human. So the two sides, unconscious and conscious, battling against each other. And I thought that was pretty interesting, because I've been feeling that sort of sense of I'm battling myself in certain ways. Like I couldn't have self-hatred or self-loathing without some kind of battle being waged within. And then there's this aspect of duality in terms of my mother wound and father wound. I've read about these a while ago and from lots of different sources, but I don't have a really clear understanding of both of them. But I've been watching it as, so in my in my life experience, my dad was the ogre. Like, he had a lot of rage in him, and so he was kind of this scary figure, and there was a lot about the creation of my sort of fear of other people's anger in my experience with him. And then my mum was the sort of soft one, and loving and caring and supportive and so on. And so she was kind of this feminine character, my dad this masculine kind of aggressive character. And yet recently, like, I've been seeing these two roles switched. Like, all of these, my brother has been looking into my ancestry and finding all of these stories about like what happened to my dad. Well, his dad blew up on in the biggest Australian Air Force accident just after the Second World War, when my dad was 3 years old. A plane exploded, and he was one of the people in it. And then after that, my dad's mum, was really horrible, really nasty to my dad. And I've got all of these photos of my dad as like a 5-year-old kid, and he just looks really happy and light. And yet what I knew him as was this ogre, and very heavy and dark and angry and ready to explode at the slightest sort of moment. And yet inside all of his hardness, I think there was this real softness. On the reverse side, I'm seeing in my mum, like, the dark side. Like, she, on the surface, she's like this sort of gentle, soft side, and has this caring tendencies, and yet underneath there is there's some shadow there. You know, there's a lot of intolerance and a lot of prejudice and spitefulness. And so it's just been interesting, kind of watching these things sort of switch around. And I think it has some correlation with what I was saying about my self-loathing and what lens I'm looking through at any particular time. And yeah, again, just interesting.
Got both of them laying at my feet. Yep, they heard their names.
Okay, so something interesting happened for me when you were talking, Rob. It was like what you said gave me permission, or gave a part of me permission to, like, to have a voice. You know, you both were talking about this idea of supposing, and the, I mean, that's the conflict, isn't it? Something's happened, and there's a this shouldn't be happening. This is you know, this is not supposed to happen, and the conflict, you know, ideally is there. If you could allow the thing to happen that wanted to happen, or that was happening, without the other side, then there mightn't actually be any conflict. And I mean, that's just intellectual, but just in this moment, or as you were talking, you sort of gave me this permission to actually let that part out. But it comes with the realization that, oh, it's not actual. You know, it's a part of me that doesn't necessarily need to be serious. And I think the other thing that we hold to when we suffer is this real seriousness of each other and our thoughts and our beliefs. And for me, it came as this insight that, oh, I can let that part of me out. I can let the ego speak its mind and do the things that it wants to do and say without any sort of hesitation, if I don't take it too seriously. You know, if I remember that there's an acting happening, that the ego is just an act. It's conceptual, but it's acting, you know? And and then and then and then with you, Phil, when you're talking about Well, again, it's like the sense of separation, this kind of idea of, and actually it was reinforced. My insight was reinforced by what you said, Phil, because you talked about this werewolf, and to me, that's this culmination of this lower part, this animal part that that is reactive and survivalist, and like needs its shit, and it will do what it needs to do to get its stuff, as opposed to the upper part, which is a bit more intellectual and human almost. We think of because we're human because we've got this intellectual mind and we can do things with it, and a big thing that we do is suppress this animal stuff within us. And so what you said, it actually just it kind of it it just like validated my insight in that, okay, if the animal's coming up, then I can just let it come up. I just got to not take it too seriously. As long as I can see it, as long as I can see what it is, and I'm not like completely caught in it, then let it go. Then there's no conflict. There's not one part of me going, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing this. And it's also like a limitation. Like, imagine how much we're limiting by trying to control and curtail this part of us that wants to and be a fucking werewolf. It's a part of us that just wants to do that. And why would we stop that? What an awesome experience to have in life, to let that just come, to let that go. And then it's the same, I think, even with the human part and the.
So would you say the key thing that prevents us from doing just that, like letting it all go, is an identification?
I think it's actually a lack of identification. I think we forget what we are underneath. So it's like the reason things are so important is because of the end of it. It's because we think that we can hurt people. We forget the divinity within ourselves and within each other, and the only thing that can be scratched is the surface of anything. It's the only thing that can be scratched, and and because of all of our shoulds and shouldn'ts, we fail to see that those, like exactly what you were just saying, we fail to see the scratches in the surface actually make it beautiful. There's an element of beauty in everything, and it's only our thoughts in our mind and our failing to. Rob, it comes back to what you were saying. Our failing to see the actual, the scratch in the table is as beautiful as the table itself, and it couldn't be separate from that beauty. And it's because I'm caught in some fucking push and pull, within myself, that I'm, my attention is somewhere else. That was the one thing that you were saying, Rob, that that you weren't able to see the beauty of the sun shining on the grass. And for me, it immediately just came because I'm fucking looking somewhere else,
Because all of my attention is in my mind.
Yeah. But interestingly, though, as well, I think that there's a beauty in that too. But I'm not sure how that works out in this particular moment. Do you know? Is that another shouldn't? Is that another I don't know. It eludes me a little bit in this moment, but
Yeah, immediately what came up when Phil asked that question is because we're taught from day one to suppress. We suppress our power. We're not taught to be bold and beautiful. We're taught to suppress to fit in. That's you have to talk a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way. You can't really, the power of the werewolf is the clan, right? The powerful of the clan itself. It's like I did studies for a while into the Indian totems, and most they say anywhere from 7 to 9 totems, because they got the totem poles of the tribes, and each person supposedly has 7 to 9 totems. And I determined that the crow was one of mine. It was almost always around me. The wolf, I've always run in packs. Dogs, I've always had dogs, 2 or 3. So always been a packed animal, right? And there's a power and safety in that. They can take down big, large animals and feed for a week, on being able to hunt together in that particular type of way and protect each other in that particular type of way. So, but from the time that we're born, we're really, the imagination, um, the world that can be just expanded on, which is what I think divinity is just simply mystery. It can't be, the moment we try to label it something, we're trying to say we know what it is, and I just don't think you can. I think we can get tastes of it, flavors,
Mm.
um, insights, psychic ability, all that kind of stuff from uh, all the millions and billions of different expressions, everywhere from plants to animals to humans to everything else that we can see, stars, skies, just but I don't think, I think the attempt to put it in a box is what's been done over the years, and that's another form of suppression, right? This is what it is. And that was what happened to me. I felt like growing up, and everything inside of me was screaming no. And so the rebellion was to go into alcohol and drugs. To just, if you want to suppress everything, because I can't feel it, I can't act out on it. It's too much to deal with. If I'm dealing with these things that I can't feel, then drinking and drugging or finding other ways to do avoidance is just nothing more than more suppression. I would even say pretty comfortably, I think that the more knowledge that I was able to gain, the more I could suppress. Because now I'm gaining this idea of something through reading all this literature and stuff, instead of really just opening to what's inside of me and allowing it to come through and speak and
Mm.
dance and be a part of this world. But that's real scary, right? Because you don't. That's the unknown. That's tapping into the unknown and going out there. I think I was listening to Adeshante's Resurrecting Jesus this weekend, and he said something about connecting heart to transit mystery, is the spiritual path. Everything else is window dressing, and he usually doesn't make like really defined statements like that. But when I sat with that, connecting heart to transit mystery, um, that speaks to me. That really, it's like the ever changing mystery of you know whatever. So I there's a lot that I'm comfortable with today about not knowing. Whereas before, one of my triggers was I wasn't smart enough. So of course I had to gather more information and read and read and read and learn and learn and learn so that I could consider myself smart enough. And it's taken me down some pretty interesting roads. And knowledge is helpful for human beings to live in the world, for sure.
Mm.
Um, so, um, yeah, I think that there's just the, the werewolf thing itself, the powerfulness of that. Um, and then that even for me, being in a relationship is part of the clan. Being with a woman is part of being part of that clan. Um, for me, just brings up the idea of the positives and the negatives of tribalism, right?
Mm.
I'm still with a couple of things there, like still with one of those last things you said, Luke, which was can't really hurt another person. We can only really scratch the surface. And can we see all of those scratches as just beauty? That's quite a statement. Even if you laugh, like it's quite a profound, beautiful statement. Or a profound, beautiful question, rather. And the same, my heart was also touched in the same way, Rob, when you were saying about it was after you mentioned the Adyashanti statement of this only true spiritual path being connecting. I can't remember the words exactly. Connecting
heart to transit mystery.
Was it transient mystery?
Connecting our heart to the transit mystery of existence.
Transit mystery. So I heard it as transient.
It's transient.
Okay.
Of existence. Everything else is window dressing.
And it's funny because there is an aspect of, so when you said a couple of sentences after that, you said something like about just being more and more comfortable with the unknown, and something else related to mystery. And I love the word mystery. There's something, I love mist itself. Like I like to see fog. There's something about that where it hides everything and you just don't know what's kind of behind it, and it kind of blurs your memory of the landscape around you, however well known it is. And I know something deep down in me really likes that mystery. And then I am also really aware of a lot of my experiences where I'm really afraid of death, and so I cling on to what I know. And it's a weird contradiction in terms, in a way, because the more I cling on to something and want to keep it the same, that's going to die. Like life only seems to be about change and that transience, right? Like everything kind of is all about movement and flux and change and energy flowing, and energy that doesn't flow gets stagnant and it sort of dies. It kills the cells within our very bodies and turns into all sorts of things, cancers and so on. And so, you know, in my fear of death, I'm clinging on to something that feels safe and familiar, and I'm actually kind of killing myself. But I notice myself doing it in so many places. And it's related to that identification piece again. It's like that forgetting, like what you said, Luke, the forgetting who we truly are, but thinking or believing or choosing in a way to believe, or not giving us a space to believe something else, but choosing to believe that I'm this particular thing and I must stay that way. Or yeah, it comes back to the shoulds and the supposed tos. So yeah, I was just kind of noticing my heart comes alive when I think about mystery and just being with that. And it kind of, my energy seems to really retreat when I'm stuck in an old identification pattern. And maybe again, this is one of those places where I should reframe, where I could reframe it and just kind of, well, can I see beauty in that too? And just those questions itself, because I like the fact that something can stay as a question, because as soon as I get to an answer, it's like, oh, that's the death of curiosity. That's the death of mystery. So why do I want to get to the answer? Can I just live with a question?
It's beautiful. So nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that.
And it also relates, my last piece for now is just, it also relates to what I was saying earlier about feeling very confined here, and then remembering this little prayer about open, spacious, and clear mind. and then suddenly, like my being is open to so many more possibilities of thought, at least. But when I'm contracted into this very small, tight space, it's like all that's there, all that's been here for the last few days anyway, has been just irritation. Like, it's like I'm irritated. And I think a part of the reason I'm irritated is because the space is so tight that whatever thoughts come through, they kind of create this friction because there's nowhere for them to go. They're just kind of bouncing off the walls and creating inflammation and stuff. And so that's an irritation in itself. And then when I kind of really remember and give myself a little bit of a pause and sort of remember clear, open, spacious mind, it's like, oh yeah, fuck, the whole boundless sky out there, yeah, there is beauty around me everywhere. And then I'm at least a bit more open to the mystery, and including me, like the mystery of me. Like, I don't know who the hell I am beyond all of these like silly quirks that I have and weird personality traits and characteristics and so on, and things that frustrate people, things that rub people up the wrong way, and things that some people seem to like. And it's like, it's still a kind of mystery. But my last little piece, what I like in these sorts of sessions is like as each of us speaks, if I'm really open to it, something different flows through. Like as you speak, my heart gets touched by something, or my solar plexus gets touched by something, and different sort of energies sort of move through if I'm sort of listening from my body more than from just my head. And I really like that. It feels alive. I feel alive when that happens. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got about 10 minutes to go. About 6 I need to finish. So it's about 10 minutes. But I was hoping maybe we could finish in a particular way, if that's okay. I just had a little bit of inspiration come at the end when we talked about mists. I had some interesting like images that came into my mind and interesting sort of flow that happened. And I just wondered if we could maybe go through it together, just in our own ways. If I could just guide us through the thoughts that came through with the images, and it was quite interesting. So maybe that's a nice way just to end this, if that's amenable to you.
Sure.
Yeah, it was quite insightful and inspirational, I think, this last little thing. So, okay. So when you first started talking about this mists, what I had the feeling of was like being in a field and just sort of walking through this this wet and kind of mistiness. There's a particular feel to it, and it's a little bit not being able to see as well. So it started out this kind of set of images with just this feeling of the mist and noticing it on my face and my hands and my feet, and I don't know, maybe I want to say naked, but let's just say maybe I'm in my shorts, so I can feel it on my chest and my legs. And there's particular color to it too. The mist itself is a bit gray in my mind, or sort of transparent with this deeper color that's behind it and around it, and I sort of move around in my mind and notice that that's all the way around me. So there's nothing really to to gauge or to go off, and I'm in the middle of this unknowing. And then what happened for me was it transferred, this idea of the mist transferred into me actually being in water. And and a few sort of experiences I had. One snorkeling and being underwater in really really deep water, and it's just blue everywhere. Can't see the bottom. Can't see anything but just this blueness and the like this kind of depth to the blueness. And and for me, actually, I had a bit of fear in this sort of image, and also in the actualness of it. I felt fear about not knowing what was coming, and I noticed that I was kind of like looking in all the directions, and um, I could still see, but I noticed that I needed to like look in all the directions, and but then there's something about the depth of the blue that got me when I was under this water. And I still had this little feeling of fear, but the depth of the blueness and the different sort of shade that came with the depth um, was just so striking because I'd never seen it like that before. And all the way around me, um, funnily, I didn't look up, but I just looked all the way around, and I looked down, and I could see my feet and the flippers just keeping me in that position. And then the next image that came was I was sort of in the water, so my head was above the water, and it's common in Australia to be out and in the ocean, and in this sort of position where you just, there's no need to tread water or anything. The salt water just holds you there. And at first, I felt this fear again about not knowing what was under me, and and that's quite common. Um, and then that not knowing, it brings these images of things that could come, that were coming for me, and this is where that kind of that break between the mind, being a human up in the mind, and then the body part, um, underneath the water, in a different sort of feeling came for me. And it took a little while to let those thoughts and images of sharks and the unknown, anything my mind could picture up monster wise, coming up and attacking me and dragging me through the water. And I had to really feel that fear in that moment. And then it started to sort of dawn on me too that there's this kind of movement of the waves that was happening, and my body wasn't sort of it wasn't working like I was staying in the wave and just moving up and down, but my body was still and the wave was moving through me. So that the trough would come and my full body would be seen and felt and experienced. And then as the trough would pass and the wave would come, it would overtake the body and the body would disappear. So the role, or the role that I was playing in that moment, the body that I was, would just slowly disappear into the wave. Um, and I could feel that, oh, okay, this is where the suffering is for me. In that, if I try to hold on to that sense of me as the waves coming, and try and keep it instead of allowing it to like dissolve with the wave, then I was suffering. And and then the same if I didn't like something, if I was trying to make the wave come quicker on the other side, and I couldn't fully be in the body, in that trough, in that role or identity that was here in that moment, then I was suffering again. And that came as this funny sort of attention in the body, like holding a particular attention in a part of the body. And I noticed that there was, even though there's still this like rising and falling of emotion of like grief and exhilaration of the wave coming through and disappearing me, and then another me coming out the back of it. There was there was less suffering in just letting that flow come through, and it felt a lot nicer in the body. And yeah, and then that's kind of where it ended for me too. That was a really interesting kind of metaphor or image of one me, that there is no should or shouldn't, fully being me in that trough, and then disappearing into the wave, and then coming out another me with another sort of part of me in the other side. And that was quite interesting for me, and interesting feeling in the body. And then that's just where it ended. Just that steady rhythmic wave moving through, and then me popping up as the ego and the body, and then me popping out, and all of that was okay.
I was just in Portugal before coming here, and they have really big waves there. And where my friend is living at the moment, I was staying with, the beach kind of gently sort of slopes down to the water's edge, and then goes back to the maybe 6 or 10 feet out, depending on the tide. But and then there's a sudden sort of drop off. So these big waves kind of come in and then kind of crash very, very close to the beach, and they'll crash over each other. So it's quite challenged to get out into sort of nice water where you can swim and get back in from the beach, because you just get like knocked. You'd be standing up on the sand in about half a foot of water, and then suddenly get knocked off your feet by a big wave crashing down. But when I could get out a little bit, that was what you just reminded me of, and it was elating. Like I'd be in that trough, and then big wave would kind of be looking as though it was going to engulf me, but it would actually lift me up, and then I'd feel like my stomach was in my throat, and there was something. It was just, you just reminded me of this real excitement of being a kid, like, which I associate with being really alive. Like you're totally alive then, and totally sort of, you'd be more excited than fearful. As adults, we tend to get more fearful than excited, but it reminded me of that. But also that being in the deep water, not being able to see anything but blue around you, like I've often found that really disorienting. I used to be a scuba diver, and being surrounded by the blueness, there's kind of no depth perception until there's some other object that you can actually see. Kind of you can see how far away it is, or whatever, but otherwise my eyes are just trying to focus onto something to give me some orientation or whatever, and it's actually disorienting. And then my mind starts, great white sharks, like that's what sort of came when you were guiding me through that part. It's just these big sharks coming toward me. Nice. I like that.
You reminded me a little bit just of this Canary Islands as well, because it's the same sort of thing there, because it's this island in the Atlantic that the currents are so full on that the beaches are basically closed. There's 3 lifeguards standing in front of one flag, and just trying to have people just in that one spot and blowing their whistle the moment anyone gets out, because it's, the rips are so quick there. And it's the same in Australia, but not everywhere. It's only in particular spots. And the Canary Islands, you've got to keep your feet about you, or else you get swept out. You get swept out and back out with the current, and that's an interesting metaphor too. Holding your ground and that that mixture of excitement and fear at the same time. because you go a little bit too far and that wave sweeps you back in and you lose your feet and then you're a kilometer down, kilometer
So,
down.
so there's a question you just brought up for me, which is like, can you tell the difference between excitement and fear, the actual sensation itself? Because they're very close for me in my body. I don't know if it's different to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting, maybe a bit of homework there. Just like now, when I bring it into my mind, the excitement comes with like, it comes with something that follows it, that there could be a sense of fear here, or like a disappointment that comes on the end of it if it doesn't live up to the thing it was, what I thought it was. But I don't know. I have to sit with that a little bit longer, I think. Quite often I find that when there's like, say there's a hope and the despair, I can feel those things, and they either come from one sensation down below and come up together as an image, or they're in my experience, and then the attention moves between the sensations and then between the images that come with them, but they're definitely connected. But then there's things like gratitude, where I feel that it doesn't come with a I don't know, it doesn't come as an opposite to something.
Right.
But I don't. I don't know. It's an interesting. It's an interesting, maybe question to.
Yeah, it's got me questioning about anger. Is there an opposite to anger, that anger might actually also be the same energy as whatever, something else? And am I just looking at it through one particular lens, and it's that lens that kind of makes what could be excitement into actually I'm just scared, but actually it's just a real aliveness when either fear, well, sometimes when fear is here, when it's here really intensely, then I actually feel pretty alive when that's there. Like when the image of that shark was sort of coming, I could really feel that in my solar plexus. Like there's this strong kind of, oh God, get out of here right now. And then also my immediate reaction was to swim away, and then there was this pause, and then no, actually, I'm not going to outrun a white shark, so maybe swim towards it, like act like not a predator. And then I started playing with it, so there was this sort of sudden switch of like fear into kind of excitement, kind of being around such a huge beast that could bite me in half. Like, so it was, yeah, just interesting.
What about you, Rob? You got something to finish on?
I mean, just listening to you guys, like it always, it just brings up different things. I used to do a meditation before we would start doing inquiry. Just have people close their eyes. They'd be out in the middle of the ocean rowing a boat, and they reached down and picked something up, and the oar went away. And now the oar's 15 or 20 feet out in the water away from them. They got to dive out of the boat, swim out there and get the oar, and they turn around to come back. They see a fin between them and the boat. So that's what that brought about. And usually, I think every person that ever did it had a reaction in their body immediately. So as we were exploring excitement and fear a little bit, excitement to me seems to be a little more opening than fear does. I seem to have more contraction. Like excitement, I'm like, I can get wide eyed. I'm kind of moving towards something. I'm excited about it, something new. Excited about going to a new place, and there can be fear in going to a new place too, because now you're kind of going into the unknown, and the imagination can come in. But to me, excitement seems to be a little more opening, and fear seemed to be a little more contracting. Is what when I was sitting here, kind of playing with the mixture of those.
Definitely for me too. But what I kind of was thinking about was like, is it the story in my mind that makes me either open or closed to it? Like I'm definitely contracted when fear is there. But if I change the lens through which I'm looking at whatever experience it is I'm fearful of or excited about, then it sort of changes that
the,
openness or
the
closeness.
the thought always colors the experience, doesn't it? I mean, if we're aware of the thought, but if it's thought free excitement, it's like you're not thinking about anything, and all of a sudden something shows up and you're excited about it. There's a newness to it before thought has a chance to get in there. But you're right. I mean, exact same experience for me. Once the mind engages into something, which I really think's interesting because it's always a secondary, right? The mind's secondary. There's always what's happening first, and then the mind engages whatever that is. Um, and then depending on your conditioning, and um, I think what's going on in your body and what you're holding. And, one of the things you touched on, Luke, we didn't really go down this road, don't have time for it today, but, what type of genetics have actually been passed down? What type of tribe we know the American Indian has got a huge pass down of pain from what European settlers had done to their tribes and African Americans. And there's like this huge pain that's been passed down, and
Australian Aboriginals.
probably feel it at a very visceral level. But if we don't have that, or we can't relate to that, then it's hard to know where it is that they're talking from at some point in time. But I would think that if we were exploratory in our own right, we would all find that we have, like where I sit right now, how far back could they actually trace the genetics that were passed down to me, to my mom, to my grandfather on both sides, to them, and the other thing that you said that I thought was a little bit fascinating was you said that your father's dad was killed when he was 3. So there was just something about that was just like, this man's taken off of the stage. Here's this child being born. There was no fault type of thing to it. It's just a natural, or some type of unfolding here for everything that's happening and how many different ways it could actually be viewed. But stuff like that happens often when I'm listening from a place of curiosity has this real, I don't know how to describe it. It's like predestined type of thing. But of course, I don't really believe in predestiny. But it still seems like there's a case that can be made for this natural unfolding, that the bigger picture that none of us can ever really see. So there's something about that that's just resonates pretty deeply with me, and I find very fascinating at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, just to give you.
Go ahead.
Oh, just this is my that's my brother on the maybe the right, no, left. I don't know which side of it, but with the baby, and then my dad is at the background.
Okay, very cool.
And then this is my dad as a 5-year-old. And my dad was pretty gruff and big as a man, but just looking at his face there, like there's just this. It changes.
Well, he's got a trike, man. He is having the time of his life. He's got a trike. He's wheeling it, baby. Yeah.
But it's like to see someone as a 3-year-old that you've only known as an adult, and a kind of gruff adult too, and suddenly like this something like completely switched in my. I don't know, switched in my perception or belief system or whatever. It was it was really interesting to see that, because that's the first time we've been kind of cut off from that side of the family for a long time, and then suddenly all of these. So it's interesting that you just talked about the unfolding, really, like the predestination. Like suddenly in these last couple of years, like lots of people came. They're an Australian part of the family basically, and they came over to Britain to see relatives, and they stopped by to see my brothers, and brought these pictures with them and letters, and gave us sort of a bit of a back history, which was just really fascinating for me, because it gave me some sense of like, oh man, there's a foundation here on which I'm kind of built that I've never felt before, and now I'm kind of feeling it. So it's interesting for me. Again, that word, interesting.
Michael Brown said something about forgiveness comes from when we could see our parents as children.
Yeah.
We just look at them at a very innocent age like that. I mean, it's hard to not be drawn openly to the 5-year-old parent, and then for a moment think about where we are today with what we carry, our conditioning from everything that we've met in our life and how we've learned to process it, and then think of what they must have gone through in their lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, it helped me a lot with trying to understand my mother and my father. You know, I still play the victim, or I should say that victim identity will still surface in me at time and go into blame. But I know better today. I know that that's, you know, just part of me that, you know, is coming to the surface, and, you know, like Dick Schwartz work, all the different parts and pieces of it that we've accumulated over the years.
I guess you were well over your time limit, Luke. So, any parting words from you?
Well, it hasn't come yet, but no, I probably feel pretty good. I mean, it's interesting. I think what you're saying, to me, the simplest form of what you're saying, and the way that it comes for me is that if I'm suffering, I believe something absolute. I believe that my dad is just this way, or my mum is just this way, or I am just this way, and it's almost like naturally I could go, hey, I'm missing something here. Like with all of the times that I understood something, I can say that something's missing here. And maybe then that's enough to be able to step back a little bit and give myself a bit of space to allow another part to come in. You know, and then really that's what I see. I see inquiry as allowing that space for the rest of this, for God to give us the rest of that story, so that there's nothing to be held, and they can fall away, and then we're back to where we started, where we always are. I know it's hard though.
But it's also understanding that everybody has conditioning, and that people that have less awareness, like we've had a process where we've kind of torched a little bit of the awareness, gave it a little bit more brightness so that we could see a little bit more. But for people that haven't got there yet, they're just living out through their conditioning without having any idea that that's just, and they're completely identified and related to it. They actually take it as to be who they are. And it is who they are on you know on some stage, you know, in a fairly relative world. So I mean, you can't say that it's not who they are when that's the behavior and that's the language they talk and this is the way they see things. And I think that was a big part of what I came through after the 2 to 3 days after the election, was that, you know, in my mind, I saw a country that had been terribly suppressed for a long time by being having to say the right thing, having to do the right thing. And then Trump came along and gave voice to him. And all of a sudden, you got a guy who's president. And he's not saying and doing the right thing. He's making fun of people and calling people out, and all of that suppression came just raging to the surface. And all of a sudden, they had found somebody that would speak for them. And then you had the natural political order of things under 40 years of Biden and parties just they all continue to and people are just saying, "Fuck this shit." I don't know what kind of change is going to take place, but we are going to, and I think that's what's going to. Well, there's definitely, without a doubt, going to be some change that's going to take place. How it affects people will be depending on how you see things. I know one of the big issues is transgender. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds right now that are talking about wanting to transgender because it's so in the front of social media and stuff. I didn't know anything about that when I was 9 years old, and now it's got where it's in school and stuff. And I listened to a trans lady this past weekend, and she said, trans rights were what we were going for. We wanted health care and respect and to be able to be who they were. And then people took it and blew it up and took it into other directions, and it started to become unhealthy. And she was a trans woman saying all of this, which I think there was a lot of people that kind of felt very strongly about that too. That's what they're saying, that the country's not going in the direction that they like. I had a couple of friends of mine tell me the same thing. People join the military solely for being in the military. After a year, the military would have to pay for their transition. So there's just so much going on when it comes to family values and how you see the world and where is it going to go. But can we take it and go completely out of bounds to where it harms people now? We can, of course. We're doing just about anything as far as I'm concerned. But will we? This is where I end up. I just don't know. I really am hoping that we'll go in a positive direction and go back towards family values and so I don't necessarily see that the election is a bad thing. Whereas before, when I first looked at it, I had a narrative running, and I definitely looked at it in a particular way. So today I completely changed.
Yeah. How are we all doing for next week?
Oh, I can't make next week. I'll be on the road again, but the following week I will be here.
Road again.
Luke, I'm good. You want to do 7:30?
Yeah, let's do it a bit earlier.
Yep, 7:30. Where are you heading off to now, Phil?
And